People that have had someone object at your wedding, what happened? My dad marrying his third wife. My stepbrother and I were in the wedding party. He was about 6, I was 10. The preacher asks if anyone objects, and my brother raises his hand so very politely. My dad asks why, and my stepbrother replies, because I want you to promise to take me fishing whenever I want, first. That's honestly pretty cute. Yes, but it seems pretty fishy to me. My cousin was marrying a Korean guy she went to grad school with. His family had come in from abroad and were sitting all together on one side of the room. When they got to the objection part, this Korean girl yells out no and stands up and starts screaming in Korean at the groom. As everyone is trying to figure out what the hell is going on, an old lady calmly walks up to the girl and slaps her face. The girl starts sobbing as some more older women grab her and pull her outside. The explanation was that she was just a drunk friend that didn't want him marrying an American. Found out later that the girl was actually a childhood sweetheart that was screaming how the groom promised to marry her, which was awkward since the two were related to each other in some way, was not quite sure how. Anyway, cousin and her husband are quite happy, so no harm in the end. My wife's uncle who owned the farm we were getting married stood up at the objection part. Immediately, his son who was the man of honor yelled at him to sit down. To his credit he did. For about 12 seconds then stood up again. He objected because there was a big ducking storm coming up the driveway and about to smack the ceremony and all of our hurrying couldn't beat it. My wife made it inside before getting drenched. No one else did. Got married inside instead. Not my wedding, but at a friend's. A family member paid some kid $20 to run in and say daddy don't marry that woman. Like it was his child. Did not go over well as a prank at all. No, I imagine this did not go down well at all. From what I'm told it's laughed about today by everyone, except the bride and groom. My dad's seen an objection. He volunteers at a church. The bride and groom were siblings, and their father hadn't told them until he objected. I believe he was estranged to both of them. They already had a kid apparently. There's a song called Mariah Teresa Why Danilo where this happens, and the dad tells them days before the wedding that they're actually siblings, implication that he cheated on his daughter's mom with the son's mom. But then when the bride cries to her mom she goes lol nah it's fine, he's not your dad anyway. Kinda shit to tell them last minute, don't you think? Last minute? It was way past that. They already had a kid. First wedding in Vegas. Found a homeless guy to be a witness in exchange for a sandwich from Subway. Objected because it didn't have olives like he wanted. RIP. This sounds like something that should have been in The Hangover. I grew up in a super fundamentalist Christian community. My best friend fell in love, but her parents were pissed because they wanted to do an arranged marriage for her, so they locked her in the house for months. Finally I helped her escape, and she got married in a very small ceremony. She used to be very close to her brother, so she invited him. He was also angry about her eloping, so he wore all black, including black sunglasses, and stood there looking pissed the whole time. We specifically asked the pastor to not do the does anyone objects thing, because we didn't want to give anyone the chance. When her brother realized the pastor wasn't going to say it, he tried to stop the wedding anyway. My brothers had to escort him out. The whole thing was ducking heartbreaking. Dang. Good on you for helping your best friend get out of there. I hope the marriage is going strong, at least. Priest here. Where I am, the only objection people can make is a legal one. It doesn't matter if they merely don't approve. I had one objection at a wedding where the person who spoke claimed the groom was already married. That's enough to stop the wedding. Turned out they were Serbian, which I knew and didn't know our legal system. The groom hadn't realized the church wedding was also the legal wedding, so they'd married each other in a civil ceremony a few days before. That was fun to sort out. Not an official objection, but when my mum was marrying my dad, my grandpa her dad circled her around the church over and over again telling her he didn't have to stop, she didn't have to go in, and they could just drive away. It didn't work. They're still married 30 plus years later. Eventually grandpa learned to like dad. My ex-wife's aunt said to me on the wedding day, "You don't have to do this, yeah, no." I should have listened. My great-grandmother showed up on my mom's wedding day while she was getting ready, handed her a tall boy of beer, and said, "Here, you'll need this." Both sides of the family were pissed. My parents lived together before marriage, so some drama was expected. The marriage has outlived almost all of them, though, except that great-grandmother. She's still inexplicably alive. Not someone who had someone object at their wedding, but my older sister torments me about the second wedding I went to as a kid, first being my parents' wedding. Apparently attention-seeking 4-year-old me thought this gap of silence needed to be filled with my best Cookie Monster impression, so during the silence I yelled Cookie Monster om nom nom nominative. Obviously everyone looked around at me in shock for breaking the silence, before the bride and most of the congregation burst out laughing. This is the only wedding in my extended family that ended in divorce 4 to 5 years down the line, and as such I'm one of the people that get stared at every time this moment happens in a wedding. The oracle known as Cookie Monster. Are you open to wedding invitations from random strangers? My husband's now former female best friend said, "You know his parents prefer me. They want me to marry him, but I turned him down the morning of my wedding. My ILs hate her." So she says, "I object because I don't want him," apparently thinking, "I'll disguise my dejection with cold hard logic." She was mad cause you stole her backup plan. My maternal granddad said to my mum on her wedding day to not marry my dad as he wasn't good enough for her. He was right, of course, but if she listened I wouldn't exist. Wow, same. He didn't try on her wedding day, but apparently my mom wouldn't listen, and one day my bopper got pulled over by a cop. Somehow they ended up talking about their daughters, and he said my daughter is marrying a selfish man and I can't stop it. Spoiler, my dad is the most selfish person I've seen in my life. They are divorced, and I'm no contact with him. Glad to exist though. I was at the wedding of that rare beast, a work colleague who was actually a good friend as well. Only a couple of work people were invited by her, including a guy we'll call Matt, because that is his name. Matt and the bride had dated for a while a few years ago, but had remained good friends after. So the ceremony starts, no sign of Matt. We get to the bit, "Does anyone have any lawful objections etc," and the church goes quiet. Then the heavy wooden door to the church door bangs open and there is Matt, looking red-faced, flustered and upset, and you could see the thoughts run through everyone's mind. "Oh shit." And Matt limped awkwardly to a pew in the back and sat down quietly. He'd overslept and twisted his ankle running to the church. That was all. So no objection, no drama, but damn we all thought for a second it was going to kick off. My friend the bride even saw the funny side about 3 months later. Matt is the king of comedic timing. 2 people objected. The best man shot one and the bride shot the other. We were married on stage at a pirate festival. It was awesome. Oh my god, my husband and I own thousands of dollars of pirate cosplay for Enfest. Where is there a pirate festival? Skywalker wedding. The groom's side chick shows up absolutely hammered right when the ceremony started, screaming at him saying she's supposed to marry him. She was carried out by a few of the groomsmen. Ceremony went on like nothing happened. Find out about 1 year later that he was still cheating with that chick and another one. My dad objected leading up to my wedding, even went as far as making a Facebook he's 60 plus and letting a bunch of people know he was against it. There was no way he could object at the wedding cause he didn't come. What was it that he didn't like about your partner, and are you still together? He felt she was trying to take advantage of me. We both came from poor families, and I had skipped education and started working full time when I was 17 and moved up fairly quickly. We had known each other for a while, and she was like a child, slept 10 to 12 hours a day, needed help with doing basic chores, and wouldn't do anything challenging. She was and is always encouraging me, no matter what I try, and she convinced me to seek out a promotion when I only met 1 out of 10 qualifications, and I got the job which launched my career. As terrible as this may sound, but I'm a pretty ugly guy, and I've had a tough time with girls cause of that, but she never treated me weird, and was with me. We are still together, and have 1 kid about to hit our 5-year anniversary, and are closer than we were when we first got married. Partner was responsible for catering, and there were no olives in the sandwiches. On my first wife, my entire family objected. They said I was making a bad choice. They were right. I shouldn't have married her. So happy I divorced her 2 years later. Honestly should have divorced her sooner. Honestly shouldn't have married her to begin with. Thank God I had no kids with her. I got married and divorced within a month, and I love hearing divorcees say they wish they'd done it sooner. Congrats on getting out before you had kids. And best of luck to you in everything. I had a small chunk of my family boycott my wedding, not because of my choice of groom, but because of my choice of clergy. They even promised to pay for another clergy. I kept the clergy and they did not attend. After several years they are still spiteful and have burned many bridges aside from mine. When I got married I hadn't yet become an atheist, and my ex-wife and I wanted to use the minister from our church, who wanted $500 to perform the wedding. We were both seniors in college and trying to do a budget wedding, so we said no, and the guy who was the head of the local sci-fi club got one of those online Unitarian licenses and did us for free. Had the whole crowd saying union, so say we all, when he pronounced us man and wife. When I was a kid, I wanted to object at my cousin's wedding because his bride-to-be was mean. They're still married 30 years later, and she's still an awful person. Everyone knows he won't leave because she'd keep his daughters from him. Eat her. Holy shit, that's a lot of eyes on this post. I'm not going to go into any more detail because it might dox me or my family. I just want to say my family is massive. There's a shitton of interpersonal drama, and I'm not close to this particular branch for more than just my cousin's wife. How old are their daughters? 30 years married? Surely daughters are grown enough to make their own decisions? I was at a wedding where there were 3 parties: the brides, the grooms, and the groom's mothers. She hated the bride, thought she was not good enough for her son, etc. I was friends with both bride and groom, and they had to invite the groom's mom and dad, but they had the priest avoid the objection part of the ceremony. At the reception, there was a moment where the groom's father danced with the bride, and a few minutes later she stormed off the dance floor. The groom's dad had offered her $5,000 cash to walk away right then and there and have the marriage annulled. The reception featured a flambeau Andrey, and everybody was watching the groom's mother, half expecting her to grab one of the flaming skewers from one of the waiters and hurl it at the bride. They are still married 30 years later and have 2 kids, but I believe they are estranged from the groom's family for some reason. I will reimburse you what is most likely a small fraction of the money you spent on this celebration of your love. If you leave now is possibly the wildest, most delusional idea I've seen in these comments so far. Like, there's no way he expected that to work. He just needed to find the most insulting way to remind her that Mill is more important, even on her wedding day. Do objections on the day really achieve anything? I understand why some might object against a marriage, but isn't the wedding day too late to make a difference? In many countries an objection is a legal matter which must be resolved before the wedding can go through. Real objections can be done at any time, like if the couple are siblings or one of them is already married. Or when the groom is marrying the governess, but the groom is secretly married and keeping his crazy wife locked in a padded attic on his estate. But that instance would probably work out okay eventually, after a little cleansing fire. A friend, call her Blonde Doctor, was getting married in 5 days, and I definitely didn't care for the groom, based on his past behavior. I was joking around with a different friend, and sent them a link to a WikiHow on how to stop a wedding. Went back to a text conversation with Blonde Doctor, and it turns out I accidentally sent her the link to the WikiHow, not my other friend. Whoops. It ended up being a fairly awkward wedding. 2 years later, they're divorced and we're friends again. When my cousin got married to her wife, her parents, grandparents and a few other older family members stood up and walked out. They didn't say anything or try to stop the wedding. It was just a symbol of their disapproval. My cousin was pretty devastated because she thought the attendance meant they had changed their mind and wanted to support her, but it was just a trick. Oh wow, that breaks my heart. I hope your cousin is happy and living her best life now. Not an objection, But my mom says that during her first wedding, not to my dad, literally everyone, including her own family and the grooms, was telling her behind the scenes that she could just run off or simply call off the ceremony entirely. But she paid them no mind and went on with the wedding. A month later he got physically abusive with her. She packed her bags the same day and thankfully got out of it quickly. It says a lot when even the dude's own family told her to run. Yeah, mom says that there were signs but nothing violent had happened until then, though she does say she never regretted it, cause she met my dad as almost a direct result of her divorce. It didn't quite happen, but a work friend who was a libertarian had planned to stand up during my wedding ceremony and deliver a speech objecting organized marriage as a form of government control, explaining that it's wrong to be forced to register your relationship with the state in order for it to be legally recognized and such. Luckily he shared his plan with someone with similar political views who convinced him it would have been a jerk move, so instead he no-showed and put a long post on Facebook about his reasons for conscientiously objecting. I'm so attracted to the libertarians philosophically, then I meet one. Always antisocial jerks. Not quite an objection but sharing anyway. When my dad and stepmother married, my little brother was a toddler and had a hilarious and contagious laugh. Right when the objection part came up he decided to fill the moment of silence and then couldn't stop laughing at himself in a vicious cycle. Had to stop the wedding so everyone could regain their composure. B/C he had everyone else laughing so hard. I've never seen an objection happen, but there's always one person everyone turns and looks at in anticipation of it. Years back I Australian made online friends with a bunch of people in the UK and became pretty close with one girl in particular. We never actually said anything to each other, but there was something going on there for a while. A couple of years later she met someone actually on that side of the planet, and about a year later they got engaged and were nice enough to invite me to the wedding. I had some money saved up and had been meaning to visit some relatives in the UK, so decided why the hell not. On the day of the wedding 3 separate people pulled me aside and worriedly asked if I was going to object. Apparently the idea had got around that the jilted Australian had flown halfway around the world to stop the wedding. Edit. Since people keep asking, no, I did not object, and the idea of objecting had never even entered my head until people kept bringing it up. I was genuinely happy for them. I'm just imagining that when the does anyone object moment came, you'd had a coughing fit while those people looked on in horror. I was told by my husband's family his sister planned to object the week before she told us she would go to my husband's next wedding because we won't last long. It's been 10 years and I'm still happy she didn't go, lol. At our friend's marriage, there was a storm building outside. When the does anyone object part came up, there was a flash of lightning and a huge thunderclap. The power went out, and by candlelight the pastor said I'm not counting that, and finished the ceremony. They were married 30 years, then she died from leukemia. The video of their wedding is awesome. Slip that pastor an extra $20 for standing up to his boss like that. I want this to get to hot, just so I read some drama in here. Everyone thought I was joking. I ended up married anyway. My whole family and all friends objected to me marrying my first husband. So we eloped on a whim after knowing each other 2 months. In retrospect it wasn't wise to marry a dude straight out of rehab, a decade older than me at that. But, hey, 19-year-olds do as they do, am I right? As the story goes, my parents' wedding was officiated by my mother's grandfather. When asked if there were any objections to my parents' wedding, my father's parents rose and stood silently. This was not a surprise. My mother and my father's parents did not get along at all. Everyone knew this, so it wasn't a surprise. In response to their silent disapproval, my great-grandfather lauded their silent standing by saying something along the lines of the parents of the groom have risen in support of the couple. Thank you. It's unclear how the attendees responded, but my paternal grandparents left silently at that point. I never met them, but I think I'm glad I didn't. Not quite objected, but the priest called out the best man's name instead of the groom's name. Better than the bride saying the best man's name. My mother wrote help me on the bottom of my shoe, so when we kneeled during the ceremony everyone behind us would see it. It was pretty passive aggressive. But she wasn't wrong. Marriage lasted less than a year. Wow. Your mom is on a legendary level of pettiness. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe to my channel for more curated daily Reddit stories.